is it this blockchain or this other blockchain? The conversation will be moved to the application itself. So you won't really care what blockchain is really behind it. You will care about whether the application is a sound one, whether it makes sense, and whether it has users. So at some point in time, most of these blockchains, think of them as infrastructure. And the infrastructure is just there as capability. And there's going to be middleware in the middle. But then the end is really, the end game is applications. That is the end game.
Do you think you'll be able to arbitrage between blockchains and make money like we do with markets? So you can arbitrage information from blockchain to blockchain and be able to create value for yourself or somebody else?
If you're talking cryptocurrency-wise, like currency-wise? I mean,
certainly there, but how about information?
Yeah. There is definitely talk about interoperability. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the leading blockchains are have some projects to, I mean, that's what sidechains are for. Mm-hmm. In one aspect, there's another thing called subchains. So we can, it's not a sidechain, but it's like a subchain where it's slightly different. And then there's, there are gateways between like Ethereum and Bitcoin, for example. There will be gateways. There will be more interoperability between blockchains. But the question is at what level? Is it at the data level, or at the application level, or at the tools level? Mm-hmm. Like there's a company called Rootstock, where they say that if you write an application, that it's going to run both on Ethereum and on Bitcoin. But again, the proof is going to be in how many users will they get. I think it's going to be difficult to say, well, our blockchain is better, and now therefore it's a winner. I think you have to have a lot of support from an ecosystem point of view, and those blockchains that can gather a lot of support from developers. That's why I'm saying developers are important, because they are the real engine at the beginning. They are the fuel that give blockchains life. I mean, what's a blockchain without an application? It's really a cryptocurrency, really, only. But it's not enough. I think we have to go beyond that. That's what Bitcoin was for a long time. It was about cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. And still, today, the top of mind application is buying and selling cryptocurrency. But I want us to move away from that and to go into more, into non-cryptocurrency applications that have...
Like supply chain.
Supply chain, prediction markets, e-commerce.
Go ahead.
Yep.
He's got it.
Sorry. Okay. Just a quick question. You mentioned there's a high demand for developers, blockchain developers. There's short in supply. What's the difference between a blockchain developer and a regular software developer? And what other blockchain talent is short in supply apart from the developers themselves?
So I want to make sure I understand, what's the difference between a blockchain developer and a regular?
Yeah.
Well, there is not a lot of difference, because a lot of the blockchain languages are derived from an existing language. So I'll take Ethereum as an example, because I'm quite familiar with it. So if you take Solidity, it's inspired by Java. So if you know Java, you will be able to learn Solidity very easily. If you're a Python person, then you can pick Serpent, which is another language. There are Go clients. There are C++. Go is based on C++ implementations. There are Haskell implementations. So there are different types of implementations that are, most of them are inspired by an existing language. So right now we are saying, well, there's a blockchain developer and there is a non-blockchain developer. It's very possible in the future that this whole thing will get blurred. It becomes just like another competency where the abstraction level gets higher. So there's this thing called state channels I mentioned. Without going into too much detail, when it gets a bit more developed, state channels will allow just about any developer to develop on a blockchain without having to know too much deep into the blockchain. So they'll be able to set up trust rules between parties, between peer-to-peer users, and then simulate what a blockchain does without really touching the database. But they'll just touch it at the logical level, at the business logic. So maybe if we're lucky, then all these 9 million Java developers will just need to maybe take a 2-day course, and then they'll be able to develop blockchain applications.
What is the value of some of these private blockchains like R3 or Chain or whatever over just a regular spreadsheet? I mean, the power of decentralization is to me, is in the distributed nature of its validators, right? So what are they trying to accomplish?
Well, the main use case for these private blockchains is to simplify the processes between banks, between financial institutions, because they don't all trust each other, although they say they do. And they all have proprietary databases where in some cases there are intermediaries in the middle that are custodians or that have to check counterparty claims to get everybody on the same page. That's why there are delays in settlements of trades and all kinds of collaterals moving from one bank to another. So they see it really as a process improvement. It is not just about decentralization. It is more about being able to settle payments or to settle the transfer of assets a little bit faster, a little bit more efficiently, and costing them less money. So that's really the driving force, because it's really about a bottom line. It is a bottom line driven kind of initiative. I mean, a bunch of initiatives, a lot of them. Now the question will be that once they have all these savings, will they pass these savings to us as consumers or to their customers? So that remains to be seen. That would be the question I would ask them. Although initially they see it just as just pressure on the bottom line and being more profitable.
So you mentioned immutability is very important. I was curious then of your opinion of the recent hard fork of Ethereum and what that says about immutability.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. It was done. I agree. I mean, Vitalik said that we were lucky that we were able to do it that early in the life of Ethereum, and then we may not have that second chance again. So I went with what they did because that's what the community wanted. It is not something that you would do just on a regular basis, basically. Having done a hard fork does not mean that the blockchain is not immutable. I mean, that was a very big event that happened. That was an event that incurred some theft. So the only way to minimize and to neutralize this horrible thing that happened was to do, it was the least bad, the least worst of an option. I mean, there were no good options, but it was the better one, basically. And now I think we have to put it behind us. We have to move along, and I think they did move along. I think last week in Shanghai, it really showed that the ecosystem has moved along, because for a month or so everybody was a bit down, and they were kind of wondering, and there was lots of productivity that was lost in trying to fix this thing, and then do the hard fork in the right way, and they did that.
I had a question regarding, do you see a blockchain disrupting the cards industry? And do you see this, in terms of scaling, do you see this scaling to like 100,000 transactions per second?
Disrupting the car industry, that's the question, right? The only two examples I can think about in the car industry, one of them is a proof of concept that's getting close to getting reality with a company in Germany. RWE is one of the big energy companies, in partnership with Slockit in the UK. And they want to put a device in electric cars so that when the car is stopped at a red light in Europe, at least for now, then they can charge the car and then getting pay, and then the payments happen with cryptocurrency. It's like a microtransaction payment that happens as the car is stopped and it gets charged. So you might think, why can't we do this with credit cards or with the existing payment system? Well, the existing payment system is not very good with microtransactions, and you can argue that you can do this much more efficiently with cryptocurrency, and especially if you put a device that is like an Internet of Things kind of authenticated device that binds with the car so nobody can steal it, and there are private keys involved. So that's one example. Another example might be in fleet management. So imagine in the future you'll be able to buy a Tesla or buy a car, but then you don't use it, but you rent it 90% of the time, and you use it 10% of the time, and it pays for itself, because the other 90% of the time your neighbors are using it or whoever. But all of the payments infrastructure is done maybe via a blockchain that facilitates that, and that whoever is using it is authenticated on the blockchain. There is some identity, let's say, that checks who they are, and then the car will leave the driveway on its own. It will charge itself. It will pay for itself. It will check the identity of whoever rents it, and then it will come back whenever you need it. So, I mean, these are the two examples that come to my mind that I'd love to see, and we'll probably see them.
Thank you. Question, I get asked frequently, I'm in the investment business in the payment space, as to whether or not blockchain is a risk of disrupting a Visa or a MasterCard or a Western Union. At the same time, these companies talk about investing heavily in blockchain. So, I mean, if there is, and maybe it's the revolution question, but is there an opportunity for blockchain to disrupt something as big as the global payments industry, or is it much more likely that the incumbent players will use blockchain technology if, in fact, it does improve their businesses, as opposed to new companies?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I've said this before. I think some people have compared what we need from Bitcoin or from blockchains to be, they want it to be like a Visa. And they are saying, well, Visa is doing, I don't know, 100,000 transactions per second. And look, blockchains are now can do only 7 per second, or maybe 15 if you're lucky. On a private blockchain, we can do more. But in my opinion, we should not compare blockchain transactions to what Visa can do today. Visa works well. Credit cards work well today. It's pretty efficient. And I don't think we can beat that too much. I mean, maybe in small improvements, and at least not in the foreseeable future. The killer apps for the blockchain cryptocurrency is not payments either. It's a lot easier to pay with a smartphone using Apple Pay or a credit card. Just tap it, than to use Bitcoin right now, for example. So I don't think payments or Visa credit card payments are the killer apps for blockchains, for sure not. So when you hear these big banks or the big card companies, we know Visa is interested. They've announced they have a project with Chain. But I don't think it's going to be around payments. It's going to be about something else that is all about efficiency and giving us faster, better, cheaper services, definitely. Yes.
So I have a comment and a question. First of all, a friend of mine he's done very well through his career with a computer science company. He's not a developer, he's a philosopher. He's got a PhD in consciousness, and he does nothing with this computer science company but apply ontology. So we're getting to the point here. He works with databases, disparate databases. He breaks them down to their essential truths and connects them through those, and has made this astounding career. My comment is that I see the need for more philosophers in addition to more developers who are in that discipline of ontology. But my question was, when you mentioned that blockchain disrupts databases, I thought of the most